Good morning, hello, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm happy to see you broadcasting live from winter break. And I don't know about you guys, but we really needed this winter break. So giving me extra time to record my lessons, including my favorite unit of the entire AP world, which is Unit 6. So this is our second lesson in Unit 6. You guys learned all about imperialism and the ideologies that are used to justify imperialism. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at some case studies. Okay, today we are going to talk about the British Empire, and we're going to talk about the things that they did in the world region South Asia. So you guys probably remember from period 1 that South Asia is India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. Okay, a couple others, Maldives as well. What we're going to see today is we're going to see how the British are able to completely take control of this region. And it's going to be a pretty interesting story, and I hope you enjoy it. All right. So, as I said, guys, we are still in period 3, and I know we've been in period 3 for what feels like 3 months. But now we are in Unit 6, and so we are looking at the consequences of industrialization, including imperialism. Okay, so today we are going to look pretty uniquely at British imperialism in South Asia. And we haven't really talked all that much about South Asia in a while. So I'm going to give you guys a refresher on what South Asia looked like in period 1 and period 2, as well as what the British Empire looked like in period 2. All right, I think this will give us some good context, okay, context into what's about to happen in this area of the world because of imperialism, okay? So, a couple memes for you. I think I have one. And now that you guys know what imperialism is, this probably is a little bit more funny. So let's talk about, let me give you guys a quick refresher on where we are in the world and what, we gotta build this context before we can talk about British imperialism in South Asia. So we have not talked about India in a while. All right, the last time we talked about India, I gave you that short lecture on the Mughal Empire. Right, we said the Mughal Empire was a gunpowder empire in period 2. But we gotta go back a little bit further because I think the context will help understanding what happens in India. Okay, so think back all the way to August, all right, when you guys were all virtual and I was lecturing through a computer screen. Kind of sounds a little familiar to now, but I gave you guys a G-Persia chart about South Asia. And I went through it and I described all the things you needed to understand about this world region. So I said that South Asia historically was isolated from the rest of the world. Remember, I showed you that picture of the Himalayas and how it kind of kept India and this region isolated, which kind of allowed some really unique religions and really unique cultural aspects to form, including Hinduism, okay, and Buddhism. But by period 1, Islam had also started to permeate into South Asia. So what you saw in South Asia was kind of this interesting blend of Muslims, Hindus, and Buddhists, okay? What you also saw was a booming economic situation, okay? So India was absolutely famous for its spices and especially its cotton textiles. So you probably remember that Europe in period 1 was isolated until the Crusades. And after the Crusades, they really wanted to get spices and cotton textiles. And they wanted to find a passage to India in order to get these amazing, amazing goods, okay? This picture in the back here, this is one of those really cool cotton textiles that Indians were famous for. All right, it was a handmade good, and it was usually created in those small cottages. All right, people kind of worked with their hands and, you know, made these beautiful goods. All right, they sold for a high price, all around the world, and on the Silk Road and on the Indian Ocean trading route. Okay, so remember, period 1, India has a booming economic situation. It's highly connected to the rest of the world through the Silk Road and the Indian Ocean trading route. Okay, we're going to slowly start to change that in period 2, but not to a huge extent. So in period 2, guys, what we talked about in India is we talked about the creation of that land-based empire the Mughals. Okay, I told you guys all about this empire was a Muslim empire, but of course they were tolerant and inclusive. Okay, they were incredibly inclusive because they had to be. All right, while the leaders of the Mughal empire were Muslims, they had to be inclusive of the Hindu population because, in fact, the vast majority of the citizens in the Mughal Empire were not Muslims because they had to be tolerant. They had to be inclusive because they didn't want these people to rebel. Okay. We also said the Mughal Empire was a gunpowder empire. So through the skillful use of weapons, cannons, guns, they were able to consolidate that empire, right? They were able to fight wars and take over more land. But kind of in the distance, there were those maritime-based empires of Europe that were slowly starting to establish trading posts on the Indian coasts. Okay, we said the Mughal Empire didn't have a problem with the European maritime-based empires because they were trading. All right, this was a peaceful sort of trade. Everyone was making money off the deal. Okay, but this trade is going to make these maritime-based empires more and more powerful. And so what you're going to see on the coast of India is you're not going to just see one maritime-based empire. All right, you're not just going to see Portugal. You're going to see the British. You're going to see the French. You're going to see the Dutch. So lots of different European maritime-based empires founding these small trading posts in order to trade for these beautiful Indian textiles. Okay, but for the most part, very peaceful era. The Mughals are inclusive and tolerant, and they're not really fighting with the European maritime-based empires. So all is well in period 2, okay? That will change in period 3, and that is what we will get to today. But I want to shift gears a little bit, and I want to give you a quick refresher, okay? The British Empire. The British Empire is slowly going to be a major villain in this AP World History story. And in order to really understand how, we probably should go back to period 2, okay? So as I said to you that in period 2, so 1450 to 1750, the British Empire wasn't really a major land holding empire, all right? It wasn't Portugal and it wasn't Spain, all right? So as you can see on this map, you see Spain had all of that land, Portugal had all of that land. With the exceptions of Canada and the 13 colonies, Britain really doesn't have a huge swath of land that it has to control. Instead, it has small trading posts throughout the world. So you can see Great Britain kind of in parts of Africa. You can see them in India. You can see them in small places in Asia, okay? So not very powerful. Sure, they are still spreading their religion, which is Protestantism. They're still heavily trading with local communities for those luxury goods, but they're not really powerful enough to kind of inflict any serious damage. They're not really powerful enough to take over large swaths of land and administer tax, administer some sort of government. But that's going to change in the 1750s, well, 1760s, when Great Britain industrializes. So the entire month of December, we talked about the Industrial Revolution, and every country that industrialized quickly and early is going to become a major power player. Okay, so please keep that in mind as we continue through Unit 6 and we look at all of these different case studies of imperialism. Okay, so let's talk about state expansion. All right, so as I said to you guys, the influence of the British is going to change in period 3. Okay, they're going to go from a trading post empire to a powerful industrialized maritime-based empire. And what you're going to start seeing is that this maritime-based empire is going to start running out of resources at home. Okay, so they're going to go through their coal, they're going to go through their lumber, they're going to go through other resources that they need to continue this cycle of industrialization. And so what you'll start seeing is Great Britain and other of these industrialized states start to look for other places where they can extract raw resources to continue this cycle of industrialization. So, as I said to you guys, Britain has trading posts in India. And these Indian trading posts are all going to be run by a private joint stock company. Okay, if you don't remember what that is, go ahead and look it up in your notes. Now, you do remember, since we've talked about these guys so often, that these trading posts in India are going to be run by the British East India Trading Company. All right, I gave you a nice little acronym there, the BEDC. All right, these are the guys that, most of the British government, these high official politicians, have invested their money into this company. Okay, so it is a private company, but because of how many politicians have invested their own cash, it sort of has a large sway in the British government. All right, you guys also might remember that during the American Revolution, it's the British East India Trading Company parked in the Boston Harbor when the Sons of Liberty go and toss the tea into the bay. Okay, so this is a powerful, powerful company. Now, what the British East India Trading Company is going to do is they're going to begin to expand in India. What will happen is the Mughal Empire will start to become weak. All right, we said in period 2 that the Mughal Empire was tolerant. It was inclusive, but that's going to change. All right, the Mughal Empire is going to fracture. All right, their politicians are going to start being non-inclusive. So they're not going to be including Hindus or sheiks at the lower levels. They're going to be more almost tyrannical because they're a Muslim empire and they're not going to be inclusive in the slightest. And so you're going to start to see the Mughal Empire start to fracture quite a bit, okay? And the European powers are all going to sit back and watch this happen, all right? Probably with a big box of popcorn because they are excited to see a land-based empire with lots of power start to crumble because that's going to be their opportunity to swoop in. So what the British East India Trading Company will do is they'll actually start to expand their power within India by actually hiring groups of local Indian soldiers. Okay, and they're going to call these soldiers the Sepoys. Please keep this in mind, guys, because the whole thing we talk about today is going to start with the Sepoys. Now, the Sepoys are a mixture of Muslims, Hindus, Sheiks, but they are native soldiers to India. Okay, so the British East India Trading Company, because it is a private company, British soldiers aren't going to come in and fight for them. Again, it is a private company. That is why the British East India Trading Company will actually be hiring local groups of soldiers to come and fight battles for them. So the British East India Trading Company is going to start to expand, and it's going to do it with these native soldiers. Okay, and these native soldiers are extremely proud. They're happy to work for the British East India Trading Company. It's a prestigious job. Okay, it gives them a lot of money for their families, and it's just a good job. Although that will start to change in the 1850s, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But you do need to know that, as we said, the American Revolution is going to somehow play a role in all of this. All right, as we said, the American Revolution is not just an American conflict. It is a world conflict. Remember, once France comes on in to help the United States, it will actually lose a lot of its bases in South Asia. And so the British are going to take over these French bases and expand their power in India. And they're going to do so with the help of these Sepoys, okay? So this is the crest of the British East India Trading Company, and these are some Sepoys, okay? So one of the things the British did is they're going to probably try to kind of learn from the mistakes of the Mughal Empire. So what they're going to do is they're actually going to include groups of different Indian elites. So they'll be including Hindu, Muslim, and Sheiks into their political system. So when you have kind of local leaders that are actually Indian, you're going to be less likely to rebel. So these elites actually benefit and are often enriched by British rule. So these elites will be making a lot of money off of the British East India Trading Company and sort of this economic trading between Great Britain and India, okay? And the best way to look at it, honestly, is the British know that a divided South Asia is going to be much easier to conquer. So if you've got locals that are also part of this British imperialistic system, it's going to be much harder for others to rebel, okay? Now, I want you guys to think back to period 1 and period 2 for a second, because I said one of the major exports that's coming out of India is going to be those cotton textiles. So cotton textiles are a major export, okay? But what's going to start to happen because of the British East India Trading Company is they're going to shift this cotton export, this cotton textile export from the finished goods of these beautiful silk woven textiles, you know, that I showed you a picture of them. They're going to switch that finished good back to simply just the raw material. Okay. So what you're going to start to see in period 3 is that India is going to stop exporting these beautiful finished textiles, and they're going to mostly just export Indian cotton. Okay, so they're just going to start exporting the raw material. And this doesn't really sound like a big deal, but it is a huge deal, okay? Because what that's going to do is it's going to start to kind of wean Indians off. There's going to be less work for them, and it's going to start to kind of wean them off there's not going to be as many, other European maritime-based empires that are coming into India to trade for those cotton textiles. Well, now it's really all you can really get is this finished good, all right? And you know who's making these textiles now? Britain, okay? So Britain is going to highly, highly benefit from this change in economics, okay? No longer is India going to be the sort of peak of the world in this beautiful textiles goods. It's going to be Britain now, okay? Those factories in Manchester and Birmingham, not in India anymore. And so again, this change will benefit the British at the expense of India. So you can probably see where this is going, guys. You can probably see where the sinister British are starting to, finagle their way into changing the world, and probably not for the better. Now, I told you guys to make sure you paid attention to that part in my lecture when I started to talk about the Sepoys. So as I said, guys, the Sepoys are these elite fighting force. They are native Indians, Hindus, Muslims, Sheiks that are fighting for the British East India Trading Company, okay? And they're very proud of their jobs, but they start to get a little skeptical of the British, okay? In about the 1850s, there's starting to be some rumors. Now, I want you guys to think about Islam, and I want you guys to think about Hinduism. You guys probably remember that Hindus do not eat animals, all right? They are majority vegetarians, and Muslims are not allowed to eat pork. Now, I know this kind of sounds like a weird thing to throw in there, but this is important because the Sepoy fighters are really starting to get skeptical of the British. They feel that the British are trying to force Christianity on them, and they feel that one way they're going to do that is by damning all of these Muslims and Hindus to hell by putting pig blood on the gun cartridges. So there's going to be a new gun that's created and given to these Sepoys. And in order for the bullet to actually be put into the gun, Sepoys are going to have to rip it off with their teeth. So their mouths are going to have to touch these gun cartridges. And so there's this wild rumor about how the British are actually dipping those gun cartridges in pig's blood and then giving it to the Sepoys as a way to basically damn them to hell and to force them to convert to Christianity. And we know now, with hindsight of history, that is absolutely false. But think of how wild of a rumor that is, and think of how skeptical the Sepoys must have been that they were able to believe that, okay? And so what's going to happen are these Sepoy soldiers are going to rebel against the British East India Trading Company, okay? And they are elite soldiers, and they are going to have some serious success, okay? You can see in this map that some areas of India have a lot of, these little black areas are where these states are in full-scale rebellion. Yes, the blue areas are states that are aiding the British, but there's a lot of success, and it's not a guarantee that the British or the Sepoys are going to lose this. But India is extremely divided. All right, the Mughal Empire, the lack of tolerance, the lack of inclusivity, on top of the British East India Trading Company sort of creating these artificial differences between Hindus and Muslims. It's going to create this really toxic environment in which the majority of people of South Asia do not join in the rebellion. So there was a very, very good chance that India could have overthrown the yoke of British oppression, but instead the majority of Indians just don't help the Sepoys. All right, they sit back and just let it happen and wait for the British to win. Okay. Remember, those elites in society that the British sort of gave jobs to, allowed them to be part of this ruling system. All right, these elites are going to sit back and let this happen. All right, they're not going to help the Sepoys at all. And so eventually the British East India Trading Company will win. However, the only reason the British East India Trading Company is going to win is because the British East India Trading Company is owned by government politicians, remember. So when it looks like the British East India Trading Company is not going to be successful and is going to lose this economic cash cow of India, the British government will actually send British soldiers to come and suppress this rebellion. Okay? And so as soon as the rebellion is over with, the British government is going to look at the British East India Trading Company and say, you obviously don't have the responsibility to run this colony on your own, so we're going to take it. And just like that, the British government acquires India. Okay? No longer is this joint stock company going to have any more power. It will now be a colony of the British Empire. Okay? And this is also going to lead to the collapse of the British East India Trading Company. They don't exist today. You'd think that after the American Revolution that they would have gone bankrupt, but no. It's the Indian Rebellion of 1857 or the Sepoy Rebellion, which actually finally nails the coffin in, or yeah, the nail in the coffin for the British East India Trading Company. Okay. So I wanted to show you guys a short 2-minute video. I know a lot of you tune out for videos, but I think this one is a really helpful way of visualizing what exactly the Sepoy Rebellion is. So if you can give me 1 second, I will play that. Come on.
The Indian Empire was an oddity. It was controlled not by the British state, but by the East India Company, who ran a private army to secure their trading rights. By the 1850s, the company was incredibly wealthy. It had a vast army, consisting of a smattering of British soldiers and about 300,000 Indian troops, called Sepoys. Understanding how outnumbered its men would be in the event of a revolt, the company encouraged its officers to respect local rulers, customs, and religions. But the British grew more confident of their control and things changed. Land was seized from Indian rulers. Missionaries were admitted to India. And Indians of all religions grew fearful that plans were being laid to convert the whole country to Christianity. In 1857, suspicion that the British would no longer respect native beliefs and practices exploded into violence with the introduction of a new type of cartridge for the Sepoys rifles. The soldiers had to use their teeth to tear them apart, and a rumor spread that the cartridges had been smeared with pig and cow fat. Animals, of course, forbidden to Muslims and Hindus. The aim, it was feared, was to break Hindus' caste and defile Muslims, forcing both groups to convert. Rebellion broke out, and within a few months, much of North and Central India was in the rebel Sepoys' hands. Terrible atrocities were committed by both sides. Rebels massacred women and children. The British tied prisoners to cannons and blew them to pieces. It took more than a year for British rule to be restored and for the rebel capital, Delhi, to fall. In many ways, imperial victory wasn't really victory at all. The British never stopped fearing a second uprising. It's interesting to wonder why the rebellion has been remembered in such different ways. The British labelled it a mutiny, insisting it had been the product of a panicky disobedience by a few regiments. Indian nationalists, however, prefer to see it as a war of independence, an attempt to chase the British out of Asia.
All right, so I think that's a great video. It's really short, and I think it gives you some more context to exactly what was going on for the Indian Rebellion of 1857. And the video is correct. Historians today kind of go back and forth between whether it was a rebellion or a mutiny. I think the better way to look at it is a rebellion, just simply because, if you look at it as a mutiny, you kind of inherently assume that India was part of Great Britain anyway, and it wasn't. Something that we do know today. So I do want to end on this quote. I'm sure many of you have heard it before. The sun never sets on the British Empire. What exactly does that mean? So in the age of imperialism, this tiny little trading post empire, this tiny little island in Europe, Great Britain, all of this pink stuff is what the British own at some point. Okay, this saying, the sun never sets on the British Empire. Well, in the late 1800s, it really never sets on the British Empire. All right, if you look, the British own pretty much the vast majority of the entire world. Okay, throughout Africa, India. All right, they're going to get into China pretty soon. Australia, New Zealand, British North America. And so I wanted you guys to just think about that for a second. Okay, these European powers, these maritime-based empires, and how from period two, how trade kind of creates this need for more trade, industrialization, and this consequence of industrialization is imperialism, and this is what it results in. Okay, so I hope you guys will remember this as we continue on our lectures on imperialism. Okay, and yes, that is the Teletubby sun. I thought that'd be a funny addition to this. So guys, if you missed class, please send me an email about what you missed. As of right now, I don't know what we're going to be doing, so I can't really tell you on our slide. But go ahead and send me an email and enjoy this final little meme for you. Not entirely true, but still funny nonetheless. All right, guys, I will see you all in class. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.